In this guide, you're going to learn exactly how to climb each rank as a mid laner. My name's Hex. I'm a multi-season challenger player that's been teaching League of Legends here at Skillcapped for over 10 years. But at one point, I was starting out on my rank journey too, and I know what it's like to painfully have to climb through every rank and figure out the game from square one. That's why for each rank, I'll be revealing the one most important lesson that will result in the biggest increase to your win rate as a mid laner. And don't worry, regardless of your rank, everyone is going to benefit from watching even ranks that aren't their own, as each concept will build on one another. So if you find yourself stuck at your current rank, then this guide was made for you. And you know what else was made for you? The best mid laner course on the entire internet. It's 4 whole chapters teaching you everything you need to know to climb ranks fast as a mid laner. We break down each phase of the game where you'll be walked through step by step how to carry as a mid laner from the start of the game to the end. Pair it with our new Bronze to Diamond course where I show you how to take a bronze account all the way to Diamond, and our new Season 14 course on how to counter OP mid laners like Fizz. Then head on over to our Smurf commentaries, select your champion, and watch live commentaries from challenger players showing you how to carry out of the exact rank you're stuck in. You can try all of this out risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using Skillcapped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the exclusive discount you can only get through the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so you find yourself in the depths of Iron and Bronze as a mid laner and want to start climbing your way out. Now, when it comes to laning in mid, it can be pretty overwhelming. You have a ton of different champions being played with spells that do different things at different ranges, and so it can be really hard to know where to start. Well, don't worry, if you want to start climbing as mid, there's really only one thing you need to focus on right now: the concept of last hit turns. Your goal is simple. You want to focus on getting your last hits out of the way first before you try going aggressive or using abilities of your own. Then, once your last hits are out of the way, check to see if the enemy has to last hit. If they do, that's your time to go aggressive. The reason this works is the enemy is going to be standing still, autoing the minion, so it's very hard for them to dodge any spells or trade back. This single concept is powerful enough to win you your lane at these lower ranks, since the enemy mid won't know to do this. Meaning, the majority of the time, they will let you last hit for free, getting your last hit turn out of the way without taking damage. Then, you're free to punish them on their last hit turn. This should be the basic ebb and flow you need to get used to, playing defensive on your last hit turn, then going aggressive on theirs. Now, to be clear, when I say aggression, it can mean just landing poke from range if that's your strength in the matchup, but it's also how you're going to set up all-ins and winning trades. Siege minions specifically can be a great way to bait players to overextend into a losing trade. This is a common but powerful tactic assassins will use to get a trade to put you in their kill range, so they can then all-in you shortly after once their abilities come back up. Great, so you should now be consistently winning your lane using last hit turns. Next, we're going to build on this and supercharge your laning to the next level. If you find yourself stuck in silver, the next thing you need to do is focus on punishing cooldown timings. Very often in this elo bracket, you're going to have your lane opponent make either of the following 2 mistakes. The first one is they simply aren't aware of the last hit turn concept, and so they just go aggressive randomly. And since you're not distracted with your own last hits, it's actually much easier to read and just dodge the abilities themselves. Or they're not used to people actually playing defensive during their last hits, so they just miss everything. This is when you can ignore the whole last hit turn concept and just go for an aggressive trade with your cooldown advantage. It is way too common in silver for someone to just walk up, put every spell on cooldown, and the other mid laner doesn't even try to take advantage of it. In fact, this is the second mistake I see. A mid laner will just start spamming their abilities on the wave, and again, players let them get away with it, just sitting back playing passive. Whenever you see someone use their spell on the minion wave, you need to be looking for a punish during that time. This happens so much at this rank, where you can just take lane winning trades on repeat. Don't believe me? Well, here's a platinum, yes, platinum, Hwei. Lane starts, what do you know? The old spam spells on the wave strategy. This is worked for him all the way up into platinum because no one just walks up to punish during this cooldown. Level 2 makes the exact same mistake, uses spells on the wave, so walk up for an easy punish. Another spell on the wave, another punish. Into him using W on the wave, and with his Q still on cooldown, it's another punish. And there you go. This one concept literally won lane against a platinum player. Now, there is one main exception to the whole last hit turn, cooldown punish approach to laning. You always want to be on the lookout for what's called a double value spell. Essentially, if an enemy stands inside their caster minions, that's when it can be okay to try and hit them with an ability. The reason for this is that it not only lets you poke them, but mid laners typically have great wave clear, so it sets you up to get the push advantage on them at the same same time, which can be very overwhelming. I'll get into why pushing is so important as a mid laner later in this guide, but I wanted to just point out this exception now while we're on the topic of trading. Great, so you're following the whole last hit turns, you're punishing cooldowns, and landing double value spells. You've now ascended to the promised land of rank rewards, gold, and want to go even further. In all my years of playing and coaching, there's one thing I consistently see hold gold mid laners back, and it's not understanding the ranged versus melee matchup. Don't believe me? Here's a high gold to low platinum Sylas. Watch how this mistake will instantly lose his lane. Lane starts, he jumps in as the melee champion against the ranged champion level 1, gets absolutely crushed. Didn't learn his lesson the first time, so jumps in again, and yeah, that's instant first blood. Ranged versus melee matchups have a very simple game plan for both sides. As the melee, you have to sit back, avoid taking really any damage. Often that means giving up last hits. This is because at level 1, 99% of melee champions don't have a strong enough spell to overcome the advantage of a ranged auto attack. And here's the thing, even if you somehow get a good trade at level 1, well, that ranged champion will freely auto the wave, giving them the push advantage, securing them level 2 first. So you won't even be able to capitalize on that winning trade at level 1 anyway. And worst case scenario, if the ranged champion somehow really messed up, they can always just push with their level advantage into recalling if they need to. Otherwise, they crash the wave and rebound it, forcing you to overextend if you want to last hit. This is essentially checkmate. Talon has to either take a bad recall timing, where his wave kills the minions, denying him golden XP, or he stays in lane, and Ahri sets up a freeze and looks to land poke and set up an all-in. Instead, melee champion should be playing these matchups like this Fizz. Sit back, give the push lead to the enemy, and try to take hardly any damage. Once the wave crashes into your tower, you'll equalize in levels, and the enemy will be overextended, vulnerable to trades. And that rebound they created turns into a slow push for yourself. So if the enemy makes the mistake of overextending during this time, well, that will make for easy trades and setting up that checkmate position where they can't recall without giving up a big wave, baiting them to stay and getting you free kills. Here's the real reason though why it's so important to know the ranged versus melee game plan. Let's say you died like this Sylas by fighting the ranged champion at level 1. After your death, they'll be able to crash the wave and then recall. This is horrible, as now the wave is going to rebound back to them, so you're stuck having to overextend into the ranged champion who now has an item advantage. Let's say you somehow managed to crash the wave and recall. Cool, you've stabilized the lane, right? No, they'll just crash the wave, creating another rebound. Match your recall, and you're in the exact same position. Wave is pushing towards them, so you have to overextend to last hit. The lane literally becomes unplayable after that one mistake due to the dynamic of ranged versus melee. Think that was just a one-off and Sylas is just bad? Well, here's an Emerald Tryndamere. The exact same mistake, trying to fight level 1 as the melee into ranged. Didn't learn his lesson the first time, and so again, a really easy first blood. Now it's a push to set up the rebound, and Tryndamere's lane is over. Wave is pushing into Tristana, so he has to move up to last hit or sit back and bleed out CS, which is what he should be doing by the way, but instead, just like the Sylas, quickly feeds another death. And what do you know? The wave is crashed into the tower once again to set up another rebound. And as Tristana gets back to lane, the wave is once again pushing to her. Are you starting to see how insanely important it is knowing this game plan? So here's how ranged versus melee matchups in mid lane should play out if both sides play perfectly. Level 1, the melee champion should sit back and give up last hits as needed. The ranged champion just last hits, trying to push as slow as possible to build up a big wave and maximize the amount of time they have this advantage. The ranged champion will hit level 2 first, but the melee champion will sit far back enough to not fall victim to it. The third wave will arrive, and now there's a huge wave built up, and it will inevitably crash into the tower. While the wave is at the tower, the ranged champion can look to try and harass the melee while they last hit as long as they have a level advantage. So the melee champion sometimes still has to give up CS. However, once the melee hits level 3, he should have preserved nearly all his health and can look to go aggressive. However, if the ranged champion anticipates this, they will sit back and play passive, knowing that since they crashed the wave, it's rebounding back to them, and this again means sometimes having to give up CS while they wait for the wave to rebound and push back. In fact, not setting up that crash for a rebound is a very common mistake ranged players make in this matchup, since this can let the melee champion thin out the wave and just set up a freeze. And now, since the wave hasn't rebounded, it's not pushing back to the ranged champion. So Annie has to overextend to last hit or just bleed out CS, which eventually, just like the other examples, leads to an early kill for the enemy. And you guessed it, that means a crash, setting up a rebound. And now Annie is in that checkmate position, already down a kill, and the wave is once again pushing to Fizz. And so it's only a matter of time before she dies again, being forced to overextend to last hit. This is why you have to know the range versus melee game plan if you want to climb out of gold. Alright, so you find yourself in platinum and likely think you have a lot of the fundamentals down at this point. However, I found there's one fundamental concept that's consistently missing from platinum mid laners: recall timings. There's two main culprits behind this mistake. Here, you can see Tryndamere gets a gank and scores a takedown on Tristana. The correct play at this point is to push out the wave and then recall. You push out the wave first so that you don't lose any minions while you recall, both because you're recalling between waves, but also because pushing will create a rebound and cause the wave to bounce back and push towards you. And here's the first culprit, getting baited by turret plates. Here's why this is a mistake. When Tristana died, she got to spend all her gold on items. She now has 2,900 gold spent on items. Meanwhile, Tryndamere is sitting on 1,500 unspent gold, meaning he only has 1,200 gold spent on items. Tristana is literally more than twice as powerful as Tryndamere right now, despite literally just dying. And we haven't even talked about the health advantage. After this, we see the second culprit, reacting to fights during your recall timing. Great, I mean Tryndamere got a kill, that's 300 gold, but let's see what Tristana got during this time. She got a whole minion wave, into then taking 2 turret plates. That's over 400 gold. And keep in mind, Tryndamere still needs to recall to spend his gold since he's so far behind in items, but he can't, as that will just let Tristana get even more gold. So a Hail Mary jungle gank into a tower dive to try and get him out of this spot, but again, he's way too far behind in items due to unspent gold. It's really one of the most common mistakes I see Platinum players make that throw their lane. You see again, Tryndamere getting a gank and securing a takedown on Tristana. Again, we need to push this wave to set up our recall timing so we can spend our gold. But again, distracted by not only fights, but shortly after, turret plates, completely ignoring his recall timing. Now, Tristana is back in lane, and here's what's crazy. Tryndamere has more total gold. He has 4,900, while Tristana only has 4,600. But again, Tryndamere is sitting on 1,800 unspent gold, so until he spends that, Tristana is literally ahead 1,500 gold in items. So, despite Tryndamere actually being ahead, he can't actually fight Tristana, so she has complete control of the lane. This leads to Tristana being able to react to fights first, picking up a kill due to lane priority she really should not have. And it doesn't stop. Tryndamere is still stuck in lane, weaker than Tristana due to unspent gold. This causes him to not only lose a 2v2, but then have to recall while Tristana is able to make a play, creating a winning fight. All of this was caused by simply missing his recall timing after the takedown. This is why high elo mid laners know recall timings trump everything else, whether it's turret plates, roams, nearby fights, or objectives. It doesn't matter what you'll gain in the short term, since missing a recall timing can completely ruin your lane in the long term. Alright, now getting to Emerald is a testament to your growing skill, but now it's time to refine your play to break into that next rank. It comes as a shock to absolutely no one when I say roaming is an incredibly powerful tactic to use as a mid laner. And yet, roaming is one of the biggest reasons why Emerald players get stuck at their rank and can't break into Diamond. Most players do incredibly inefficient roams at this level. Take this LeBlanc as an example. She clears the wave mid and then looks to roam. To most players, this seems good. She cleared the wave first to set up the roam timing after all. She even ends up getting a kill topside. That's 300 gold. Well, let's just see what Fizz got during this time. 1 minion wave, into 2 turret plates, into a second wave, into mid tower. That's over 800 gold, 500 more than LeBlanc got for her roam. You see, your roam timer is actually dictated by how fast you cleared the wave. Take this Fizz as an example. As soon as the next wave arrives in lane, he looks to clear it as fast as possible. A trick is to pay attention to where your next wave is on the minimap. Since the enemy's wave position is mirrored, this gives you an idea of how long of a roam timer you have. You can see how Fizz was able to get a successful roam off and get back to lane and only miss 1 melee minion. Exact same idea here. As soon as the wave arrives, we try to clear as fast as possible to give ourselves maximum time to roam, paying attention to the next incoming wave to know how much time we have. Again, getting a kill on Lee Sin during this roam timer into not only getting back to lane without missing a single minion, but now solo killing Annie since she didn't have time to clear the wave and leave lane. If we go back to that LeBlanc clip, after she cleared the wave, take a look at where her next incoming wave is. Yeah, it's pretty much already in lane. She never actually had a roam timer. Still, even with a good roam timer, a common misconception is that roams are free if you push the wave first. The thing is, if you commit to a roam on a side lane, it's very rare to be able to do that fast enough to get back to your lane on the next wave. In other words, expect to lose at least 1 wave and possibly give a turret plate to the enemy. Notice how in both the Fizz roam cases, you didn't actually have to commit to a side lane roam. It was more in the river. So, you should imagine that around halfway into the river is how far you can consistently roam to without losing minions on the next wave. For this reason, you shouldn't be pushing into immediately committing to roams. You do what's called a half roam. A half roam should look like this. You push and then go around halfway, check the state of the nearby lane. If they're gankable, you commit. If not, you head back to lane. The nice thing about this is it applies a ton of pressure to the enemy team since they don't know if you're committing to the gank or not. This makes it incredibly hard for them to play aggressive, so in a way you get to protect your laners, while if they do die, you're there to commit to the roam and clean up. What's even better though is you can turn these half roams into fake roams where you look to gank your own lane. This will be done either from the enemy laner trying to follow your roam, while you then jump them from a brush, or you just let them think you've committed to the gank, so they overextend to start farming or pushing, only for you to then gank them from a weird angle they weren't expecting, often resulting in a kill you otherwise wouldn't get if you lane normal. Also, you have to get comfortable doing a half roam, then realizing either your team doesn't need you or the fight is lost, especially when your roam timer has ended and your next wave is in lane. Most players commit to bad roams because they're scared they won't get another opportunity. But trust me, if you keep half roaming, eventually another opportunity will present itself. Roaming really is one of the most important skills to develop as a mid laner, and it's why we have an entire chapter just on roaming in our mid lane course. So if you're someone who really struggles with roaming, I highly recommend checking it out. Alright, so now you've made it to Diamond, the Promised Land, or absolute solo queue hell depending on how you look at it. The biggest mistake I see Diamond mid laners make that hold them back from climbing higher is being afraid of side laning. This is typically an issue with mage players where they mistakenly think they can only impact teamfights, that if they go to a side lane, they're just gonna die. I mean, it goes without saying, if there's a super fed Nocturne, Rengar, Fizz, or Fiora, yeah, of course you're gonna die. But you have to be aware that in games where you have a lead or a good side lane matchup, you can be just as threatening in a side lane as really any other champion. The most common example of this passive play I see is when a mid laner is in a side lane pushing, then they literally see on the map all of the enemy team going for a fight on the other side of the map. But instead of continuing to push for more minions and possibly take a tower, they instinctively just recall, like they're not allowed to ever pass the river. Or another similar example is they go to a side lane to pick up a wave, push it, then just instinctively recall. One of the most powerful tactics you'll have in the side lane is the push into roam, since after you push that wave, the enemy will send someone to pick up the wave, temporarily pinning them down and giving you a timing window where you have a number advantage. So roaming immediately off that push towards mid can often be key to actually carrying the game. Compare that to if we push, then always recall. Well, as you leave base, you're either having to go back to the side lane you just pushed, since the wave will have been pushed back, or the enemy mid will have their roam timer to match you if you do go mid. To be clear, I'm not saying every game or every time you push, you can go do a roam. A lot of the time you will have to recall due to needing to spend gold or whatever. However, you can't just default into passive play. You need to pay attention to the map and look for these more aggressive plays, whether it's just a simple push into roam timing or recognizing the enemy overcommitted to picking your teammates so you have a punish by continuing your push and taking a tower. And yes, sometimes you will die overextending or losing 1v1, but that's a necessary part of the learning process. Alright, and finally we have Master Ples, literally less than 1% of the entire player base. If you find yourself stuck in this rank and want to make that push into Grandmaster, even Challenger, I'll give you one piece of advice I've had to learn multiple times the hard way. Typically, everyone in the Master to Challenger range is so good that it's not like you'll be able to learn or improve at something they don't know that will give you some kind of massive win rate boost. Instead, at this point, it's often a bunch of incremental small improvements that give you the edge. That's not my advice though. You see, because of how things often boil down to the accumulation of razor thin advantages, it's incredibly easy to toss your win rate into the garbage by having a bad mentality and playing tilted. As a mid laner, you won't always be in the driver's seat. Since you're in the center of the map, some games you'll have the enemy jungler and support roaming on you 24/7 and it feels like you don't even get to play the game. That then leads to the enemy mid having lane priority, getting successful roams off, and suddenly you're now being blamed for mid diff. In lower ranks, you can outskill opponents enough that you can probably play a bit tilted, even flame your teammates, and still carry and win. However, this kind of mentality is going to keep you hard stuck in high elo, as the drop to your win rate tilting will cause cannot be made up for by a skill difference at this point. And this is honestly a huge issue a lot of high elo players you'll both be playing with and against will have, whether it's due to the competitive drive high elo players have or the ego they develop, or a combination of them both. If you can stay calm and level-headed, you just automatically get a big edge on your opponent. Now, if you've been stuck at your current rank as a mid laner, Skill Capped is what you've been looking for. We just released the best mid laner course on the entire internet. It's 4 whole chapters teaching you everything you need to know to climb ranks fast as mid. We break down each phase of the game where you'll be walked through step-by-step how to carry as a mid laner from the start of the game to the end. Pair it with our new Bronze to Diamond course where I show you how to take a Bronze account all the way to Diamond, and our new Season 14 course on how to counter overpowered mid laners like Fizz. Then head on over to our Smurf commentaries. Select your champion to watch live commentaries from Challenger experts showing you how to carry out of the exact rank you're stuck in. You can try all of this out risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using Skill Capped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the exclusive discount you can only get through the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and that will do it for this one. We here at Skill Capped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.